Dear black men, every time a presidential election rolls around, they're telling you that this is the most consequential election in generations. This time for us, it may actually be true. When was the last time America asked black men what we wanted? And I know what it's like to not be asked what you want. I'm married to a black woman. But I promise you, it's not a trick question. Tonight, we're going to explore the issues that matter to us. Now, whether you support Kamala, ride with Trump, or plan to stay home, let's have a real conversation among us, black men, about what's really at stake in this election. This is the BET Black Men Summit. Let's get to it.
Black men, as you know, are a closely watched voting bloc.
I'm speaking to men directly.
Be on a major party ticket as a DEI hire.
I didn't know she was black.
But polling shows that some black men are considering voting for Donald Trump.
Black men are like any other voting group. You gotta earn their vote.
Tonight, with the future of America on the ballot, BET is bringing together an extraordinary group of black men to elevate their voices for real talk about the issues they say are most important in this election. The state of the economy, economic opportunity, reproductive rights, protecting our communities, and Vice President Kamala Harris's record as a prosecutor, and more. This is the BET Black Men Summit. Here is DL Hughley.
Thank you. We are just days away from a razor-close presidential election. So tonight, in this room full of black men, we're going to ask tough questions about the economy, immigration, protecting our communities, and much, much more. With me on the stage, we have civil rights attorney and my frat brother, Ben Crump, is here. We have activist, doctor and activist Wes Bellamy. He's also here. And actor and activist Michael Ealy. Now, of course, there's been a lot of talk about VP Harris's record when she was a prosecutor in California. Specifically, people who said she locked up thousands of black men. And to tell you the truth, and full disclosure, I fell for that one. And I had a meeting with the vice president. She asked me to do something simple, which is to actually look at her record. And I looked, and she was, in fact, not what I imagined or professed. And I think that I felt like a lot of young black men felt. And you see these systems and these agencies just running roughshod over black men. And you can't believe that anybody who represented that agency would be any different. That's not to make an excuse. Obviously, I should have done my research. And by the way, research isn't doing things to edify your perspective. Research is about challenging what you believe.
Exactly.
It's not about that.
Exactly.
So we're gonna check out that perception in a minute, whether it's still out there. And we sent, of course, Vic Mensa to North Carolina to find out just that. Let's roll the tape.
Peace, y'all. This is Vic Mensa. You know me from Chicago, but I'm here in Charlotte, in the swing state of North Carolina, to speak to black men about the issues that are important to us in this election. Let's go. Do you think there are reasons that some black men have an aversion to supporting Kamala Harris?
A lot of misinformation. You have, you know, the things that was done, track record in California. A lot of people have ran with that.
Harris has a track record of doing certain things to black men or just the black community as a whole, but so does Donald Trump. So once again, I'm up in the air.
What misinformation have you heard as it pertains to this current election and candidates?
When it comes to Kamala Harris, they say we're not gonna vote for her. Well, one of the reasons they say they won't vote for her is because she threw thousands of black men in jail for, you know, marijuana cases.
You know, how we consume information now is more so in a bite-sized way. So a lot of times you get the sensationalization of what they put out there first, and people just hold on to that and don't necessarily do the research.
Like, if you just do the research, it's far from the truth. I mean, you have a phone, you can Google it.
Do you think there are unfair judgments that black men are uneducated with their votes?
You say uneducated? I'll say to a degree, yeah, man, to a degree. But I would say uninterested would even be better, though.
I appreciate you, bro.
All right, Vic, thank you for that. And you went to the streets, Vic. You spoke to a lot of brothers. I'm sure even some of them didn't even make the tape. But that is a pervasive mentality out there. Or is it, let me ask you, what did you see? Is it that pervasive? Do a lot of people think that?
Speaking to black men on the street in North Carolina, many brothers had concerns about Kamala Harris's history as a prosecutor, as did I, being victims of the prison industrial complex. I'm a legal cannabis entrepreneur myself, so when I first heard the figures that she incarcerated thousands of black men for marijuana, I was very skeptical. Now, when you look into the actual numbers, it was 45 men in total that were sentenced for marijuana charges, and that's not specified by race. On the other hand, a main point of conversation is Donald Trump's storied history of racism. And the reality is that you have a candidate here who is supporting ideas of blanket immunity for police. These are the police that are the modern day manifestation of slave catchers and overseers, and that blanket immunity is to give them freedom to kill us with freedom from prosecution. So.
I want to get a quick fact check from the president and CEO, also a frat brother, of the NAACP, Derek Johnson. Now, Brother Johnson, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not as dumb as I think I am sometimes, but why was I so susceptible to it? Why did I believe something that caused such harm? Even now, some of the things they're saying, I'm sure I had a hand in. I mean,
fear is the most powerful motivator. It either paralyzes us or propels us. Law enforcement against black men, it has been a long-standing fear from slavery forward. And so when you can tap into that vein and you can hear something that could have a kernel of truth, she was a state prosecutor. She was a local prosecutor. The corner of truth of she are lining up with police officers who were not in our best interest, that's easy to accept as a reality. The concept of progressive prosecutors really came into being around 2015. And when more progressive prosecutors started getting elected across the country, we began to see more reforms locally. And she was a part of a lot of those conversations. California today is not California in 1992 when NWA was saying F the police.
Yeah.
We are in a new reality now.
Right. And thank you. Now, being Crump, what is your view of VP Harris and her record when it comes to criminal justice?
You know, as a civil rights lawyer, I got to interact with Vice President Harris when she was the Attorney General of California. We were not on the same sides, but I saw her passion to do the right thing and her passion to try to help black people. When we think about it, DL, you have to think that this is a sister who grew up in Oakland, California, and she chose that the best way I can help the system is to be a prosecutor, be on the inside. Most of the time, you have people like me, we're fighting on the outside.
But don't we want that?
We need people on the inside.
That's to your point. Yeah. I think we put prosecutors, black prosecutors, who we elect a lot, in an untenable position. We want them to be protectors of the community, which that's the gig, that's the profession. You work with her, I'm sure you were in court with her on the other side of the stake, but
out of that, we gained a healthy respect for one another. While everybody talks about prosecutors being tough on crime, she came up with a concept called being smart on crime. When she became prosecutor in San Francisco, she said, I'm gonna be smart on crime. She had this back on track policy that said when young brothers and sisters messed up, she said that if it's your first time and you're under the age of 18, they're not gonna charge you with this crime for life. If you didn't get in any more trouble, and if you graduated from high school or you got a GED, they would expunge your record. Now, what prosecutors we know when we were growing up would treat us like that? That's Kamala Harris.
It's the notion of justice tempered with mercy. Michael, we spent a lot of time talking about our roles, but we need prosecutors. There's no debating that. What is your message to black men who have this reticence because of her role as a prosecutor?
I'd say open your mind to the data. it amazes me oftentimes how many times Democrats have to provide receipts for all of the things that they do and for all of their qualifications. And yet on the other side, there's just no accountability. When you look at what Kamala Harris, who's been a public servant basically her whole life.
Right.
She is the most qualified candidate to run for president right now.
There's no debating it.
So, we can sit here and debate on, you know, what her record was as a prosecutor. But like you were saying earlier, let's talk about Trump's record. Let's talk about his record. What has he done to be qualified to be in this position?
He got some dope tennis shoes. You seen him, man? Come on now.
You know, that's the thing that, like, you know, we never seem to, like, hold him and his administration, who has more felonies and indictments than any other administration in the history of politics. And yet we worried about her being a prosecutor.
You know, he'll sit and go, I'm gonna be tough on crime. I'm like, don't you got a court date next month? That's crazy. You're gonna be tough on crime after you meet with your probation officer. Oh, there it is. There it is.
Exactly. Exactly.
Coming up next, we got crime, gun violence, and protecting our communities. That is coming up next.
We must protect our black women at all costs. And the biggest way we could do that in this election is to vote.
Generations upon generations of black folk have risen to meet their moment. And this, for black men, is ours.
Everybody is trying to get our vote.
What do you say to black men who do say the economy was better under Trump?
I don't remember this magical time period when everyone was doing well.
The stimulus checks, the locking people up for selling weed, these are the street topics that's happening. That's all I keep hearing.
Raise your hand if you know someone who's been shot or killed by gun violence. I mean, look at this.
Is we are facing an election for democracy versus a dictatorship.
They want to have somebody to blame the election results on, and they're not going to do that by blaming black men. We're not going to be somebody's scapegoat.
Stay with us. The BET Black Men Summit will continue in a moment. Welcome back to the BET Black Men's Summit.
Welcome back. Now, I want to dig into the candidates' approach to fighting crime in our communities. We want safer communities, police reform. Wes Bellamy, honestly, which candidate, and just, you know, which candidate you think gives us the best opportunity for that dynamic to happen?
Well, to me, I think it's very simple. I'll tell a really quick story. From 2016 to 2020, I was the vice mayor of Charlottesville, Virginia. Many of you are aware, in 2017, we had white supremacists come to our community.
Oh, the good people on both sides.
Right. So I was the only black person on the council at the time, the youngest person elected. And after a group of white supremacists literally came into our community and unalived someone, rest in peace to Heather Heyer, the first press conference that 45 had, he stated that, again, literally, there are good people on both sides. Furthermore, this is the same individual, if we're talking about who should should we trust to keep our community safe, wants to provide police officers with full immunity to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do whenever you feel like a situation arises that requires you to not use best practices, whether that be using patience, calling a mental health professional, but if you believe a person needs to be shot down like a dog in the street, you do so, and you won't have to face any consequences. So when we talk about a matter of safety, a matter of keeping our community safe, you have a person who literally just rambles and acts off of emotion, compared to an individual who's saying that I candidly want to use legislation and policy to find ways to not only keep our community safe, but help us thrive in every way imaginable.
You said something that I very rarely hear black men say, safe.
Yeah.
And when we use it in that context, it's never for us. You've never, no, I'm just talking about, in your lexicon, when have you ever said the notion of safety is something somebody else gets to have and you don't? But it is because it's so far removed the concept. You started to say something like that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. What you were just saying just triggered something in me, and that is, like, we're worried about her record as a prosecutor, and we want to attach her to to a bunch of incarcerations that didn't exist. And yet, if you look at the two candidates, and you look at the George Floyd situation, which one is more likely to pardon the killers of George Floyd? Which one?
That's the question.
Wow. Because he's already going for the blanket immunity. Which one would do it?
Do you know what's interesting? You have children, you know the story. You teach them, like, don't look them in the eye and be respectful and watch their moves.
Yeah.
It is lunacy to teach our children to be held to a higher account than the paid professionals we pay to patrol our neighborhood. But it is such a fear in us that is what we're reduced to.
So think about how crazy that is. The fact in which, as you just alluded to, and think about the psychological and mental trauma that we're asking our children to jump through these loops just to keep you safe, opposed to being able to teach those who are supposed to be sworn to serve and protect, to do the right thing. And we want to be clear, not all police officers are bad, and we know that not all individuals who have been sworn to protect and serve are doing nefarious things. But to provide them with blanket immunity and then have black men say that, you know what, I'm willing to potentially side with that person, those are real conversations that we have to have with them about why you're choosing to do so.
Now, of course, gun violence is the leading cause of death for black men under the age of 44. Wow. With us in the audience is activist Greg Jackson, a gun violence survivor. On this issue, Greg, I know it's very personal to you, but does it matter who's president, gun violence issue? Does that matter?
Yeah, DL, it definitely matters. And I've had the honor of serving in the White House, but I'm here in my personal capacity. This is personal for me. In April 2013, I was shot after a club let out, and the bullet that hit me hit 2 arteries. And I'll never forget getting to the hospital, and before I met my doctors or my surgeons, I met investigators and went through 3 rounds of investigation where I was literally bleeding to death and fighting for my innocence and for my life at the same time, just to find out that I had a 26-minute window left to live due to blood loss and a 50% chance of making it out of surgery. And I'll never forget that feeling of being seen as a suspect first and a person second. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing in our country, all over our country every single day. Raise your hand if you know someone who's been shot or killed by gun violence. I mean, look at this. Every single person in this room. This is the #1 cause of death of black youth since 2006. And since I was shot, nearly 1 million Americans have been taken by this crisis. For me, that's one of my childhood friends. That was nearly me. 2 of my mentees, one of which who came to Capitol Hill to fight for the policies to address gun violence. That's who we're losing in this crisis. And here we are coming out of coming into an era where we have a vice president who has been working on this issue, has been leading the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, who passed the first law in 30 years, who has been focused on this issue almost her entire life, and literally has ushered in the steepest decrease in homicides in American history for now 2 years in a row. But during the Trump administration, we saw the steepest spike in murders in American history. And that's not numbers. Those are our friends, those are our family members, those are our cousins, our nephews. And guess what he does? Brags about doing nothing. He says, well, we got to get over it. Get over it? I'm not getting over my mentee in a casket, watching his mother cry, watching his football coach wonder what he's going to do, watching his teacher say, man, he was so full of promise. 13 years old. I'm not getting over that. We can't get over that.
Thank you, man.
That's real. That's real.
When we come back, former President Obama called black men out, saying that many of us are sexist if we do not vote for VP Harris. We're going to dig into that, so you just stay with us.
And I'm speaking to men directly now. Part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president.
I think we got to be honest in our own community about the reality of sexism.
So, like, if you're masking your sexism with, she's not black. So what is it?
Elections are choices. We have a choice right now. I think this is the clearest choice we've ever seen in a presidential election.
Stay with us. The BET Black Men Summit will continue in a moment. Welcome back to the BET Black Men's Summit.
Welcome back. Now, of course, earlier this month, President Barack Obama, he called us all out. He said that some black men aren't feeling having a woman president. Let's roll the clip, and we will discuss it on the other side.
And you're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. And you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that.
Okay, we are here now with Tennessee State Representative Justin J. Pearson, Ben Crump, and Michael Ealy. So they're joining us on the panel. Okay. As a nation, we've never had a female leader. Never. Right. So there is an unspoken idea that a lot of people have, whether they say it out loud or not. So what was your impression?
Look, I love President Obama. And I think we got to be honest in our own community about the reality of sexism and the role that patriarchy plays in our own community. Sure. I go to churches a lot, and there are people who will greet me and not greet my fiance, who's standing right next to me. So like, there's a real conversation we need to have about what is going on inside of our communities and what we can do to make sure that we unlearn some of the behaviors that are really negative, and that are really harmful. What is also really important is that we do understand the facts. An overwhelming majority of black men are voting for Vice President Kamala Harris to be President of the United States. Right? 80% of us. So, you know, the truth is, you got that one uncle that you need to talk to. But the majority of us, we good. Right? Like, we on the same page. But there is some work that we are going to have to do as a community to figure out what are the qualms, what are the issues, what are the problems that 20% or so of black folks who a few years ago were voting Democratic and all that are having. And I will say this about Donald. In our country, our socialization has taught us to praise people with a lot of money. Our socialization has taught us to praise people who are famous. Our socialization has taught us to praise people who can get a lot of women and can say what they want and do what they want and have said, hey, that's the image of a real man. That's the image of a strong person. That's the image of a real leader who can just fire people at will. Now he's running for president. And a lot of people are like, wait, no, that's not it anymore. But years of socialization have taught us that actually that is the image that America has put forward as the image of what you want to be, of the person that you want to lead. So it isn't just a black issue. We got a nationwide issue about the perception of hypermasculinity masquerading as leadership, when in fact it was our mamas and our grandmamas and our great-grandmamas who got us here.
Well, I tell you, that part. I'm telling you, and the fro, baby.
And the fro, baby.
You know what's always interesting? We hear about the polls, and one of the things I know for sure, the quickest way to make a black man lie to you is walk up to him and ask him a question with a clipboard in your hand. So, I mean, it's ridiculous, and what I refuse to do is to let, mainstream polling operations tell me what men I'm with every day think. I refuse to believe that.
Hey, you know what's deep, Pierre? You know, we talked the NAACP and Urban League, Reverend Al, and them a lot. Isn't it just profound at this moment in time that black men votes are coveted so much? I mean, I've never seen that in my life. And I think that's something, when I saw that Obama piece, I thought about how everybody is trying to get our vote.
But power concedes nothing without a demand. And I honestly believe this is one of the first time nationally, collectively, we decided, we want to hear you, but there are things we have to have for that. It's transactional, which politics is supposed to be, right? What was your reaction when you heard President Obama say that?
Well, there are some men who don't want to vote for a woman. The founders of Project 2025 really don't want a woman as president. And their women don't want a woman as president. That is not being held to the same standard. If, in fact, you are one of those individuals who believe that a woman should not be president, speak on it. So, like, if you're masking your sexism with, she locked up a whole bunch of black men. Well, that's already been debunked. So what is it? Or she's not black. Yeah. So what is it? What is it that's really, just speak on it.
Now, Ben, we can't have a convo about sexism or any other kind of ism without talking about the way some black men see the LGBTQ+ community. They see it as getting more attention than some of the concerns of black men. I mean, that is something you hear constantly. So, Ben, what do you think? I mean, it's not like I'm,
yeah, well,
speaking out of school.
Everything has to be taken in context. When you think about civil rights, we must remember that if they can discriminate against them, then it makes it easier to discriminate against us.
We got black queer folks in our community, in our families. And so whenever I live in Tennessee, we have passed more laws against LGBTQIA+ folks than anybody else in the union. And I continue to remind folks, if you open the door of oppression a little bit for somebody you think is different or other or an enemy of yours, the person you opening it with will open it a little bit wider to push you in. And when we think about our community and black folk, we all in this together.
Right, right. What's interesting, we have to understand that our concerns, where we gather at this place is different. At one point, it's illegal for slaves to learn. Now they want to make it illegal to learn about slaves. First, black people couldn't go to the bathroom, then gay people couldn't go to the bathroom, now transgender people. What are white people keeping in the bathroom is what I want to know. I got to see what's happening. That's the divide. Whatever we do to let them in the bathroom, it must be a good credit score in there or something. But coming up, we're going to dig into VP Harris's opportunity agenda for black men. More Black Men Summit coming right up. Y'all stay tuned.
This idea that we were doing better under President Trump, I, again, didn't experience that.
The stimulus checks, to locking people up for selling weed, these are the street topics that's happening. That's all I keep hearing.
Actually, it's black men who helped craft this opportunity economy because the vice president didn't want to talk about black men or talk down to black men. She wanted to listen to us.
A woman who listens? What?
Stay with us. The BET Black Men Summit will continue in a moment. Welcome back to the BET Black Men's Summit.
Welcome back to our Black Men Summit. We have the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Nevada Congressman Steve Horsford. He's here. Entrepreneur and CEO of The Gathering Spot, Ryan Wilson, has joined us. And of course, legendary producer JD, Jermaine Dupri, is here. But first, we're going to start by hearing directly from black men about the election. Our special correspondent, Kenny Burns, hit the streets of Atlanta. We got to roll the tape.
It is your lifestyle specialist, Kenny Burns, reporting live from Atlanta, Georgia. And if you don't know, Georgia is a swing state, and we're here to find out what black men want most in this election. And never forget, the South got something to say. What matters most in the 2024 presidential election to you?
I mean, I think everybody got money on their mind.
The focus around mental health.
What about the border that she let run loose?
The immigration stuff, the negative stuff about immigration and just whose fault it is.
The economy, of course,
I feel as though a lot of black men tend to think that Donald Trump is better for the economy. What do you say to that?
I've heard that, but what I've seen is that Donald Trump, he's a gangster, but he's presented himself as a successful businessman who's filed for bankruptcy 6 times.
Inflation, definitely inflation.
I see that as this is going on, you're starting to see a diminish of middle class, and it's either lower or upper class. They're having to say, well, let me take a backseat on my wellness so I can pay my mortgage this month. I can pay my rent. I can feed my kids.
The percentages that we were seeing increases in our groceries and in our bills was higher than inflation. And so I think that it's created an opportunity for us to be taken advantage of.
And I think to the Trump point, people got that stimulus check and just thought that was all his job, and that's what they're clapping about, but it's way deeper than that.
The stimulus checks are not coming back.
If we are empowered economically, then we can shift so many of our outcomes.
What would you tell those brothers and sisters who are undecided but need to be going to the polls?
What other choice do you have right now?
Talk to me nice. Talk to me nice.
All right, we are back, and of course, Kenny Burns is here with us. That was a dope little piece, man. I appreciate it. The federal minimum wage has remained at $7.25 since around 2009, and it seems like the economy is on a lot of people's mind. Obviously, they even have a book. It's "The Economy Stupid." So, how do you speak to that? What are you hearing?
I really feel that it's heavy on our minds because Atlanta is an opportunity economic city. Sure. We all came here, if you're not born and raised here. Originally, I came to go to school, but I stayed and started a business. I stayed and raised my family. I have a 20-year-old and a 24-year-old who will be, exiting college soon and getting into the workforce. And the big thing on people's mind is how are we going to take care of our families and how are we going to encourage our kids to start families. So economics is very important.
We talked about this. I mentioned this in the question I posed. I remember 40-some years ago, I worked at McDonald's. I made $2.65 an hour. And 46 years later, the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. So we can't have a conversation about just inflation without the commensurate wage growth. Now, Jermaine Dupri, you've heard this a lot, that things were better under Trump. I've heard it a lot. How widespread do you believe that is?
I don't believe that.
No, I'm saying, but it is a pervasive.
Oh, yeah.
It is a pervasive attitude.
Yeah. No, I mean, I represent. Oh, I don't represent, but I'm here to speak to the YDS generation.
Sure.
That's the young, dumb, and stupid kids that's out there, right? And they have this.
Well, they are. That's crazy.
That's what it is. They have this in their mind that, as Newface said on the video, the stimulus checks, they're paying attention to things like that, and they're not hearing the information that needs to be heard.
Right.
The stimulus checks, the locking people up for selling weed.
Right.
These are the street topics that's happening.
Sure.
That's all I keep hearing from.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I feel like it's really important that we as men in this room we give them the facts today.
But there was a specific reason that Donald Trump, even though he didn't get those checks out, there was a specific reason he delayed them so he could put his name on it. He knew it would have that effect. Correct. He knew who it would meet. And Congressman Horsford, what do you say to black men who do say the economy was better under Trump? Because I hate when somebody tells me, like, if I go somewhere and it's hot, and they go, but it's a dry heat. I'm still hot.
Yep.
You can't tell people how to feel. Right. We can tell them about the metrics, but it is a pervasive attitude that the economy was better.
So look, a couple things. I'm from Vegas, so I do know dry heat.
Yes, you do.
But I also know a liar when I see one. And Donald Trump lied about providing economic opportunity for Black America. In fact, it was Donald Trump who asked Black America, what do you have to lose? And then when he got into office, he appointed Supreme Court justices that showed us what we had to lose by taking away our fundamental rights. Now, on the stimulus check, let me just get the fact out. Democrats in Congress were in the majority. We passed the bill that provided the relief, not only for households through the stimulus check, but also the child tax credit that lifted 50% of Black children out of poverty. When the Republicans got back into the majority, they did not extend that benefit, so those children went right back into poverty. We helped small businesses get the support to keep their businesses open and to provide employee retention tax credit so that employees would stay on the job. Right. It was about people and saving lives, and Donald Trump did not do that. And I'm tired of talking about the last 4 years. I'm more concerned about what Donald Trump will do the next 4 years if he gets a chance to be the president. And we can't let that happen.
But it's very shrewd in a way because people are simplistic. It's the things you can say. It's the things you can repeat. And it's always funny when they talk about, today, I guess he was saying how low the unemployment rate. It's weird for black people to hear unemployment rate because it was pretty low during slavery. That wasn't that great. That's not a great marker. We was brought here to work, so thanks, pal. That's not the same thing. We have Charles Phillips. Charles Phillips is a business leader also. He works closely with VP on the economic proposals. Why should black men not hold the Biden-Harris administration responsible for inflation? Why should that not be a real thing? You look like Obama. You know that, right? You do.
Yeah, I do. So first of all, I'm older than him. He looks like me.
Why shouldn't they be held responsible for inflation?
It's a fair question, and I think you have to put the Trump economy in context. That was the Obama economy he inherited. So I served on the Obama Economic Recovery Board during the financial crisis. He had to fix something, an economy that was tanking. He fixed it, handed it off to Trump. It was growing 2.4%, generating about 210,000 jobs a month. Trump had to do nothing but not screw it up and leave it alone. That first 3 years, that kind of worked, and then COVID hit. COVID wasn't Trump's fault, it wasn't Biden's fault, but that was the beginning of inflation. What happened was we got all the stimulus checks, we all spent all that, but that meant that caused inflation because we're all buying in the grocery stores, couldn't go to restaurants, so we're buying the same goods. People stopped working because for the first time they could take off for a while. That raises labor costs. To get people off the bench to work, you got to pay them more money. And then other things happen. The Ukraine war, that makes oil prices go up. Biggest producer of grain in the world, Ukraine, grain prices go up. All this stuff is happening at once. But that last year, all that started under Trump. So what did he do? Did the stimulus checks, which made sense because you have to save people, people had to eat. But then it accelerated under Biden because it takes 3 or 4 years to work through the economy. That's already happened, that's behind us. What's happened now is inflation has come down. It was at 9% when he started, it's at 2.5% now. We're getting better. We just need to keep doing what we're doing now. That's exactly what VP Harris plans to do. Continue to the plan that's under place right now.
Okay, thank you, man.
Thanks.
We have Ryan Wilson now. You're an entrepreneur also, and there is, and we've talked about this a lot, there is the belief that the economy was better under Trump, and it plays itself out. On my radio show, I hear it so much, I started to believe it, and I know better. I'm like, wait a minute, you can lie to me, and I'm feeling like you were telling the truth. Why is that so pervasive? And they truly believe it. It's not something that they're kind of just repeating by rote.
I mean, I think it's important to note that prices were lower during the Trump presidency, but an important point has already come out in this conversation. President Trump inherited the Obama economy, right? Like, that is just something that we have to put on the table that happened. He inherited what the previous administration had done to make sure that the economy was in a good position when he started. Now, if you fast forward, many of the businesses that I serve at the Gathering Spot, when I think about what we were talking about during the Trump presidency, those conversations were not positive, right? So I don't remember this magical time period when everyone was doing well. We were still talking about access to capital being tough to find. We were still talking about trying to figure out ways to grow and scale our businesses. None of those fundamentals changed throughout the Trump presidency. And to the idea of having a plan, I never saw President Trump produce a plan while we were going through that time period. When COVID hit and we were in the middle of just very, very tough circumstances, what I watched happen were businesses in the community close. So this idea that we were doing better under President Trump, I, again, didn't experience that. And many of the folks that I serve every single day certainly will tell you that that was a very difficult time period.
The interesting thing about leadership is we can't, to your point, we can't tell what's going to happen. But every president is challenged in some way. Correct. And is the measure of that presidency how successful they deal with that challenge. And the one thing that's unassailable is there was a complete, total failure of leadership in that position. And I think that when people don't realize that, all right, hang tight. Coming up, we're going to dig into VP Harris's opportunity agenda for black men. Y'all stay tuned.
She went to Atlanta and to Philly and to Detroit to listen to entrepreneurs, men that want to own homes. From that conversation came this Black men's agenda. It came from us.
The fact that there is a plan is something that we can't take for granted, and something that does not exist on the other side of this conversation.
Maybe the job you see an illegal immigrant doing, you're going, I should be doing that right there. You know what I mean?
Stay with us. The BET Black Men Summit will continue in a moment.
Welcome back to our Black Men Summit. I am D.L. Hughley. Still with me are Jermaine Dupri, entrepreneur Ryan Wilson, and Nevada Congressman and Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Steve Horsford. Now, Steve, you helped craft VP's economic opportunity agenda for Black men. What is in it?
Well, first, actually, it's Black men who helped craft this opportunity economy because the vice president didn't want to talk about Black men or talk down to Black men. She wanted to listen to us. She actually kicked...
A woman who listens? What?
So she kicked off...
Where is she at? No, I'm just kidding.
So she kicked off these opportunity tours, these economic opportunity tours, some time ago. She went to Atlanta and to Philly and to Detroit to listen to us, to listen to entrepreneurs, to listen to men that want to own homes, to talk about the wage issue in communities. And from that conversation came this Black men's agenda. It came from us. And that is what we need in a leader, not just for president, but all elected officials, to not take us for granted. So in the agenda, she's talking about addressing work, wages, and wealth, to be able to own more than we owe, to move from a consumer-driven economy to an ownership-driven economy, one where we actually have a stake in this.
Equity in it.
Through home ownership, by providing $25,000 worth of down payment assistance. She wants to help more entrepreneurs actually start their business by providing $20,000 of forgivable loans, loans that do not have to be paid back. We did that for small businesses during the pandemic. She wants to do it to help entrepreneurs start their business, and then when they start it, she wants to provide $50,000 of deductions in the first year of the business, because that's where you need the help the most. So centering these issues is what she heard. She also heard the need to address health care by establishing a national health equity initiative to tackle sickle cell, prostate cancer, and diabetes, the three leading cause of death for Black men, disproportionately. And yes, we can invest in solutions to provide better education and prevention and treatment to save Black lives.
You know what I found interesting about what you just said, in addition to those things, but they were things that were tailor-made for us. They're things for us, by us, to use an acronym. What part of her plan, Jermaine, do you think will appeal to young people? How do we reach young Black men with the plan and aspects of this plan?
I just think we got to get out in front of them and give them more information. Like when he was just saying, I just raised my hand and tried to get a question in. Why is it being said that we are not voting for this election? I don't know.
But
this
I think it's
because they want a scapegoat. They want to have somebody to blame the election results on, and they're not going to do that by blaming Black men. We're not going to be somebody's scapegoat.
You know, you're absolutely right. But I think, in addition, it's really the same old story. There is an attempt to fragment. Like, there's a legitimate question as to whether the vice president's support among Black men is eroding. But an equally legitimate question is, why is Dick Cheney and Jeff Flake and Geraldo Rivera not voting for Trump? So you can see there is a deliberate attempt to disengage, because the one thing that was on the sale about Vice President Harris is her enthusiasm. And how do you dampen enthusiasm? You fragment it.
Yeah.
We were talking, of course, obviously aspects of this plan. You're an entrepreneur. What part of that plan speaks to you individually, like as an entrepreneur?
The tax exemption for small businesses is huge. Moving from $5,000 to $50,000 would have been a game changer for me. I think it's going to be a game changer for a lot of entrepreneurs out there. I think we have to take a step back, though. The fact that there is a plan is something that we can't take for granted, and something that does not exist on the other side of this conversation, right? So we've got to acknowledge, while there are a ton of details, right? This is for the brothers out there that say, well, where are the details? There is a ton of work to do. We actually have to go through the legislative process. We've got to go through Congress, right? But the fact that there is a plan on the table is something that we should be excited about, right? So the thing that I'm most excited about the plan is that there is one, right? And we need to make sure that everyone in the community knows that that plan has been produced and that we're going to actually make those things happen.
Jermaine, you hear this a lot. I know I do. When it comes to the economy, the subject of immigration invariably comes up. A lot of black men, and I shouldn't say a lot because we're not a monolith. We got Barack Obama and Flavor Flav, so I don't know how somebody gets it. But there is the belief that immigrants are taking our jobs. You've heard that, right?
Yeah, but not in Atlanta.
I know they can't be so different.
It just don't happen here.
You know what's interesting? You do hear that, and whenever I hear people say that, because I know in Michigan and Wisconsin and a lot of Rust Belts say that is something that is bantered around about. But the thing is, I always hear they're taking our job. Name me the job you see an illegal immigrant doing. You go, I should be doing that right there. You know what I mean? So there's an attempt to fragment and to kind of. The one thing I will say that the Trump administration has done successfully is whether you are disaffected, black or white, he's giving you somebody to look down on and somebody to blame. And that is a commodity that is, for some people, worth it. We're going to talk to Mark Marial, looking all fly. Look at you. You are the former mayor of New Orleans and the current head of the National Urban League. What is the real truth about immigration?
The truth is that for all the rhetoric, there has not been an immigration bill. And when there was an immigration bill to try to fix the immigration system, guess what happened? Donald Trump didn't wink and nod. He pulled out his bullhorn and told his friends in Congress, do not pass it. He functioned as an obstructionist. An obstructionist, once again, playing games with all of us. So the issue is, do you run on a problem or do you run on solutions? And immigration is a challenge in America that needs a solution. But we have to remember as black people that a substantial part of immigrants in America are black people.
Yes.
Haitians,
yes.
Nigerians, Jamaicans, and a substantial part of the Latino community are Afro-Latino. We have to understand this and not allow this old strategy. It's an old game. Divide and conquer and confuse and then laugh.
Yeah. First we wanted your woman, then we wanted your job, now we're eating your pets. Like like black people, we don't even walk dogs. How the hell are we gonna eat them? That's crazy. Coming up, black men and the issue of reproductive rights. You'll stay with us.
Reproductive justice is a black man, a black woman, a black people issue.
My granddaughter, who was born in September of last year, she was born with fewer rights than me. We can't be a nation that yells freedom when 50% of our population doesn't even have freedom to have autonomy of their own person.
This is why it's so important what we're all saying. We must protect our black women at all costs. And the biggest way we could do that in this election is to vote.
Stay with us. The BET Black Men Summit will continue in a moment. You're watching the BET Black Men Summit. Here again, D.L. Hughley.
Now I need to hit on another issue that some see only as a woman's issue, reproductive rights. Is this an issue for black men that we should be focusing on? Our Kenny Burns and Vic Mensa hit the streets to find out.
You were telling me about your concerns with the next generation, and I'm wondering, does reproductive rights factor into this election for you and your decision making?
Oh, definitely. I'm definitely pro-choice. I think a woman should control what happens with her body 100%.
I think the reproductive rights aspect makes
the choice for who to elect very clear.
Someone coming in and say, hey, this is what you need to do with your body. Like, we have never experienced that. And I don't want them to experience that.
And we need to stay out of that. I think we also need our government to stay out of those things as well.
I don't believe in abortion. Just being honest with you, I believe we abuse the right.
Is that a big part of your decision-making this election?
For me personally, it's not high up there, right? I'm not going to say that it's not of importance. There's no disrespect to women at all, right? I come from one.
Oh, definitely affects my vote. I'm a father of 4 daughters.
You know, my choice, my body, and stuff like that. And it is. I'm not going to say anything, you know, too deep into that.
Not with all these black women behind the camera.
You know what I'm saying? But I don't get jumped, you know what I'm saying?
When we empower and give women the right to choose in every aspect of their life, we as a society advance.
All right, we're back now with Kenny Burns and Vic Mensa. Kenny, man, do black men see reproductive rights as an important issue?
I think here we all believe that black women will say the planet correct.
Yeah.
We also believe that, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we come from a black woman, they should have rights to their bodies. We should not be in control of any woman's bodies. And as far as men are concerned, you know, a lot of young men aren't ready to be fathers. And with this happening, you know, it would put them into a place that they're not ready for.
Vic, what do you think? What do you think about that?
Many men I spoke to felt that women's reproductive rights were important to them, but not their top priority.
Sure.
However, the fact remains that maternal mortality rates amongst black women are exponentially higher in states with Republican-led abortion bans. As black men, our primary responsibility in this humanity is to protect black women.
Yes, indeed.
That's why we're here. And I think protecting black women begins and ends with listening to them about what makes them feel safe. And they overwhelmingly support the right to choose what happens with their body. A majority of over 75 to 80%. So I think that it's an issue of paramount importance to us and to me.
Yeah, you know, thank you. Like there's this word radical, like it's radical for people to want to have control of their body. But, you know, that's the radical thing. But it's not radical for a teenager to bear the child of a rapist. You got your R's messed up. That's just crazy to me. Still, like, you know what I'm saying? So, speak to that.
Yeah, you know, again, this is an issue because 45 was president. He put 3 Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court who raised their hand and said, we would not touch Roe v. Wade. And then what's the first thing they did? They repealed Roe v. Wade, and it has had a heartbreaking impact on the black community especially, because when you think about the maternal mortality rates of black women during pregnancy and labor and delivery issues in this state of Georgia, it is 2 to 1, right, Cliff? 2 to 1. And so it hit close to home for me because Attorney Michael Harper and I represent the family of Amber Thurman.
Oh, wow.
This is a sister who, DL, is the first documented case that we are aware of where the extreme abortion bans actually resulted in a woman in a hospital bed with doctors who could have prevented her death, but because of concerns that they would go to prison, we believe they let her suffer for 20 hours while she was vomiting and passing out and turning colors. And nobody told her family, her mother was there, nobody told them that we're not going to treat her because we're afraid we might go to jail. And so it affects all of us, especially black men who have daughters. In fact, DL, we have Amber Thurman's father, Andre Thurman, here with us. And he can say how it affects black men more than anybody.
These laws have tremendously affected me. I lost my baby behind them, letting her just sit there for 20 hours, that didn't do anything. Well, I can't thank Kamala for keeping her name alive.
Yes.
And doing everything that they doing for us. Thanks.
I was born in 1964. I was the first one of my mother's children born with the full rights of an American citizen. My granddaughter, who was born in Atlanta, Georgia, my second grandchild, she was born in September of last year. She was born with fewer rights than me. It should not be, there have to be things that we agree on. And we can't be a nation that yells freedom when 50% of our population doesn't even have freedom to have autonomy of their own person.
Yeah.
And as black men, it is we know what it's like to not own your body.
Yeah.
Why would we want to do that to somebody else? What I don't understand. What do you think,
about what Donald Trump is doing? If Vice President Kamala Harris wasn't saying Amber Nicole Thurman's name, it would be swept under the rug. And so the choice is clear when you're talking about a woman's rights to choose. Who do you think is going to look out for our wives, our daughters, our sisters, our nieces?
Oh, the reproductive justice is a black man, a black woman, a black people issue because of the history that you mentioned. For hundreds of years, we were considered chattel in this country, property of other people. Yeah. Right? Black women were having the children of their rapists, who were the enslavers.
Right.
But you know what is also part of America's story? In the 1900s, the sterilization of black women.
Yeah.
The sterilization of poor women. Millions of women were denied the right to ever have children because they were poor or because they were considered feeble-minded. And that was state law and federal. It was eugenics, but it was policy. And we are living in a time where people's rights are being taken, that autonomy is being taken, again, in policy, again, in law. And so we have to realize the intersectionality that black women are living with. They're dealing with the pain of being black, right? And also the promise that comes with that, but they're dealing with the pain of being a woman. And also the promise of that, where we, as black men, we do benefit from patriarchy.
Yeah.
We men.
Yes.
We benefit from sex. We benefit.
You
And
can
it's all
stop
right
talking
to
right
tell
now.
it.
That's enough.
It's all right to tell it.
Stop it.
It's all right to tell it. But then
this ain't the Oprah Summit. Stop it.
Before I get to the, listen, before I get to the mountaintop, before I get to the mountaintop, because I'll do it here. Look, what comes with it is our power, and using our power to uplift the voices of those who have been made powerless.
Absolutely. Michael? What is this notion that that's not an issue that is supposed to be top of the ticket? The idea that's important to us. What do you think of that?
How many of us have daughters and sisters? Okay.
You see all the bald dudes in here? They got daughters. Wait, I mean...
Yeah, exactly. I don't subscribe to the narrative that we are not in support of women's reproductive rights. I just won't subscribe to that. I think it's another narrative that they're trying to put on us to divide us. And I believe that historically, the civil rights movement was accomplished by black men and black women coming together. Sure. And I believe that right now, black women and black men are coming together when it comes to reproductive rights. Black men will always stand up for their daughters and their sisters and their mamas. That is a known fact. That is a known fact. So if you are one of those individuals who's thinking selfishly about this particular election, and you thinking, well, you know, I'm not really feeling this because, you know, there's nothing in it for you. Exactly. Think about your sister. Think about your daughter. Think about your niece. Sometimes it is about us, but oftentimes it's about our community. Yeah. And all of the women in our community deserve better.
You think reproductive rights is not your issue, you need to think again. Stay with us. Final thoughts on what's at stake in this election for black men when we come back.
The time is now. Like, this is it. This is our moment.
When you go into your voting booth, you can either promote or fire any elected official that you want.
I think we have this expectation that we have to be in love with the candidate. And the reality is we are facing an election for democracy versus a dictatorship.
More of the BET Black Men Summit in a moment.
Welcome back. This high-stakes election is just days away, and I want to allow some of our guests to share their final thoughts and their call to action. So, Brother Crump.
DL, when you think about Project 2025 and the way they have told us what they're going to do to kill the future for our black children, our sister Kamala Harris becoming the President of the United States gives us the best chance for having an equal opportunity at the American promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Michael Ealy?
I think I want to start off by just saying I think we need to stop trying to romanticize elections. I think we have this expectation that we have to be in love with the candidate. And the reality is we don't. What we have to focus on, gentlemen, right here, right now, is we are facing an election for democracy versus a dictatorship. This is perhaps one of the most fundamentally easy elections to kind of discern which way you want to go. So we have to teach everybody, we have to talk to our relatives, talk to our friends and family about voting down the ballot and making sure that Vice President Kamala Harris has the Congress that she needs to get legislation passed that's going to give us what we want, that's going to give us the agenda for black men. That's what we have to fight for in this election. So we have to work on that. It's our chance to do that.
Representative Pearson.
Yeah, I mean, look, the time is now. Like, this is it. This is our moment. And generations upon generations of black folk have risen to meet their moment. And this, for black men, is ours. Whether it was W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington rising to meet their moment, whether it was Frederick Douglass rising to meet his moment, whether it was Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. rising to meet their moment, this is ours. And it is our opportunity to make sure that the future that we want to live in is more possible. And that is why we have to elect Vice President Kamala Harris to the presidency of the United States of America. That's why we have to do this. So this is it. This is our time. This is our moment. Let's win this thing.
Yeah, for sure. Amen. I'm going to be your campaign advisor. That's what I got.
Come on. I need you.
Come on now. I want to make sure we include some of the voices in our audience. Khalil Thompson, what are some of your final thoughts?
So I have an amazing 7-year-old CEO who is my pride and joy. I wonder on Wednesday, November 6th, when she wakes up, I want her to know that this world is still fair, that she still has the opportunity to realize every dream that she has, and it hasn't been diminished. So I ask every brother here, every brother that you have the opportunity when you go into your voting booth, when you vote early, when you do vote by mail or absentee, you are the CEO in this moment. You can either promote or fire any elected official that you want. I believe, as my pastor said, can't tell you who to vote for, I'm telling you who I'm voting for. I'm gonna vote for Vice President Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. But I just need you to go and vote. Participate in this election, be that CEO in that moment, and do your job.
That's it. Want to hear from Quentin James?
Malcolm X told us that the most disrespected, unprotected, and neglected person in this country is a black woman. And we watched Donald Trump call my Howard alum sister, Vice President Kamala Harris, my AKA Divine Nine sister Kamala Harris, a bitch. If that pisses you off, brother, I need you to do one thing. Go to votetolive.org, find out what's on your ballot, where you need to go vote, and actually get a free ride to go vote if you need an Uber to get to the polls. We are providing that for you. Go to votetolive.org. Let's protect our black women and show up to vote.
And of course, I really want to hear from this gentleman, Keith Boykin. What are your final thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, thank you, BET, and thank you, DL, for providing this opportunity for the conversation. And elections are choices. And we have a choice right now. I think this is the clearest choice we've ever seen in a presidential election. On the one hand, we have a man named Donald Trump who has 34 felony convictions, who has a history of racism from the Central Park Five to his black casino workers to being sued for racial discrimination in the 1970s to his lies about Barack Obama's birth certificate to the fact that he was impeached twice and tried to start an insurrection to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. Come on. And on the other hand, we have a talented black woman who started her career as a district attorney, became a state attorney general, became a United States senator, and then became the vice president of the United States, is the most qualified person in this race, perhaps the most qualified person to run for president because she has experience at the state, local, and federal level. And she also has experience in the judicial branch from working as a prosecutor, and the executive branch from working as the vice president, and the legislative branch from working as a United States senator. Who else has that experience? This is a choice. This is a choice. I just hope that we look at these two people and we choose wisely.
Yes. First off, I'd like to thank you, BET, President of BET, and everybody else, and all you gentlemen, because I think this was necessary. I will say this. There is a reason there has never been a female leader of this country. There's a reason there's never been a black female executive of this country. I think because it's very hard. A man gave up power. Yeah. A white guy, the most powerful man on earth, said, I'm going to give up his power, and I'm going to make sure she has an opportunity to become the first female president of the United States of America. That never has happened before. It is divine presence. It is divine. And it's what we do in this moment, as you said, President Pearson, it is what you said in this moment. It is what we do now that we will judge by. So thank you all very much. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. A shout out to the Black Economic Alliance for their research, for their special. The conversation continues on BET.com and BET Social. Thank you guys. Thank y'all so much.